I'm Ed Gray. I'm a painter, and been sort of, I suppose, self-employed as an artist for about 14 years now, 13 years. So I paint scenes of London and the characters and people of London, really. I go out on the streets and I make drawings and go back to the studio and make them into paintings, large scale paintings.
Brilliant. And Ed, can you tell us a little bit about your education journey?
Yeah, I did a foundation course at Wimbledon Art School for a year, and then I went to Cardiff Art College for 3 years, and then I left art college. And I tried to kind of make it as a painter, but I sort of struggled quite a bit, and eventually kind of gave up painting. And I started kind of working in my flat at home, making sort of small scale paintings, and then.
How are you surviving financially? Because these talks are kind of about employability. Yeah. So were you working? Like, how were you living?
Well, I had jobs. I had kind of part-time jobs, and I worked. Eventually, I had a small, well, quite a big studio actually. Which was in a squat in southeast London.
Oh gosh, so was that free?
No, but it wasn't very expensive. You know, it was affordable.
So it was a way to get some cheap studio space.
Yeah. I mean, I was delivering furniture. I was working for an antiques firm.
Yeah. Shopping
all over London. You know, which was a nice job because it meant that I was seeing different parts of London. I was learning about the city. It was kind of mid 90s. It was part-time, it was cash in hand, but also we would deliver, you know, painters that I liked. We would deliver, you know, Lowry to Christie's and Sotheby's, and you know, I could sit in the back of the van and just kind of feel this Lowry painting without anyone seeing me, and you know, so that was great. Yeah, it was amazing, you know, so that was really good, but it meant I was only getting a few days a week in the studio, you know, which wasn't enough. And I think at the time, you know, I didn't really know how to do what I wanted to do. You know, I wasn't very confident about going out into the streets and making drawings. You know, I mean, I was very self-conscious about doing that. And, yeah.
That seems impossible to think. You ever thought that, really, given the massive body of work you've got over street scenes? Yeah,
I mean, so at the time, you know, I would kind of do it. I would try and do it, but from memory. And it just didn't really work, really. So I sort of packed up and I got a job at the Natural History Museum as a guard when was that, in 1998, and that was a full-time job. But it meant that in the evenings I could make paintings, and I just started painting out of my window. Really, I started doing still lives, but then I put them in the window while I was working on them, and I suddenly started looking out the window and seeing the people walking past, and that kind of became a way to draw from a distance, really, to draw people in the street. And then what happened? After about a year, what was it, 2 years I was at the museum, and during that time I did a lot of reading of art history books, and I was volunteering at youth clubs, running art clubs, and I kind of felt that I could teach, that I would be a good teacher, you know, and I thought that would be an interesting path to go down, really. So I got into Exeter to do my PGCE, and I went there for a year, and I taught in Cornwall for 6 months in secondary schools, and then I think from that experience I just really enjoyed teaching, and I came back to London. I went to Exeter because it was a really good school of education, but also it was a lot cheaper than living in London, and living in Cornwall I was paying next to nothing, you know. So in Cornwall, when I came back from Cornwall, I got offered quite a few different jobs, but I chose a school that I felt would let me do what I wanted to do. I had quite a defined kind of view from my education course at Exeter of what I thought was important in art education, and the school that I chose was very desperate for good art teaching, and they didn't use proper paint. They just used powder paint. the kids were all over the place. They were crawling up the walls, and I just thought, I could do something with that school. I could, because it's beginning from, you're beginning from scratch. Really.
Yeah.
So,
I'd forgotten all about powder paint, like probably since I never used it when I was 10 until you mentioned it.
Yeah, well, they used to just, these are 13, 14-year-olds, they just chucked it at each other. So then they weren't allowed to use powder paint, But because they were giving them rubbish materials, they were making rubbish work. They didn't know how to mix colours.
I'd forgotten about powder paint. It was rubbish, wasn't it?
Absolute rubbish. And then, you could do interesting stuff with it, but if you used it in an interesting way, but they weren't. They were just throwing it at each other.
Yeah.
And because they weren't taught properly, and they didn't do any sculpture, which I loved because I was always a painter. So, I was able to kind of do all these great figurative sculpture projects out of, minimal budget of 72p per child, But so you had to.
Per lesson or?
No, per year.
What?
That's what it worked out as. Yeah. So for a class of kids, so that would be their whole kind of term's budget for their art education. So
that is, and considering that the education budget's been cut.
Yeah.
It's
it's been a while. I've been out of it now from that side of it for quite a while. So I don't know what it is now.
Well, it can't have improved.
No, what it did was it made you very resourceful, and you made work out of whatever you could get your hands on, which I think is pretty good. It's quite good really too, that side of it. To have limitations on your practice is. So that was a really amazing time. It was a very difficult time, and I being someone who wasn't naturally confident speaking in public back then, I found it very difficult. And these were very, on the whole, quite difficult kids.
Yeah.
But lovely kids, but they were just in a difficult environment. And,
a lot of people I know who've done PGCE, either compulsory or post-compulsory, have said that PGCE year, kind of transformed the personality almost. It kind of
completely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would say probably more so than Cardiff. It was a different stage of my life, but it made me think about art in a way that I hadn't really had to do at art college. Art college for me was more about developing sort of as a social person really, and just kind of having a good time, but being amongst very creative people that that I was very impressed by. There's a level of seriousness at Cardiff that I hadn't really encountered before. That's what I got from that. But
it was crazy, wasn't it, to see, because we did actually we were on the same degree course in the same year, weren't we?
Yeah.
And I felt that I met so many types of people that I would never have come across at 18 years of age anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think the nature of that college, there wasn't very much for us in that town, and we were kind of forced together to kind of create something. We created the bar, and that whole kind of social sort of side of it was amazing. I loved all that. So getting back to the PGCE, I think that really did kind of shape me. There was a lot of philosophy on it. We talked about Wittgenstein a lot, and it was amazing. It was such for 3 months we were only in Exeter for 3 months, and then we were in Cornwall for the rest of the time. Well, I chose to go to these really remote places in Cornwall, thinking it would be all romantic, but actually it was really lonely and hard.
But all of this, do you feel that all of this is kind of fundamental to when you started kind of being a professional artist, really, and your subject matter and how you approached it? Definitely,
I think in terms of my practice, the structure that I got from the formal sort of, having to be a teacher, having to, I took my first teaching job. It was only 3 days a week, and I wanted a job that was 3 days a week so I could paint the rest of the time. So that was always my plan. But during those 3 days, I had to be so structured, and then almost when you're working in a school part-time, it's almost like you're having to pack 5 days into 3 because you have to catch up with everyone. You're at a different rhythm, and so that was quite a difficult thing, and it was physically quite exhausting really, but amazing, and great to be part of that community, and you know, and a lot of my paintings at that time were about where I was teaching in Peckham, and you know, that whole area, you know, which was changing and is changing even more now. You know, so that was quite exciting.
So how did it start to kind of happen for you then?
Well, I had a studio that I was working in 3 days a week, and I was doing lots and lots of paintings, small scale paintings, and eventually, you know, one of my flatmates said, "Come on, you need to have a show. You know, you've got all this work. You need to do something with it." So that was in 2001 in a little pop-up gallery in Brixton, and you know, I was really surprised at the private view because so many people came, and you know, it was amazing. You know, it was all in those days. Obviously, we didn't have Facebook and Twitter and all of those things, so it was all, you know, handwriting letters to people, sending them invitations by post, which was really expensive, and you know, trying to get everyone to come. But they did. I couldn't even get in the gallery, so that was really, the support was amazing. I didn't sell any work.
You did not?
No. but it, you know, it gave me the confidence to kind of, you know, to keep going. And actually, after the exhibition, people came to me and asked if they could buy stuff. So, you know, I didn't sell it at the private view, but after, like, the show had come down, you know, I mean, I would have sold it through the gallery, but they weren't particularly good. They weren't very good at organising anything, really. So, but then when people came to me afterwards, you know, I said, yeah, you know, you can buy that, which was great. So that gave me some income then, and then at the time I applied for a sabbatical in Bermuda that I'd heard about through a friend of a friend who lived out there, and I just got talking to them one night, and they told me about this amazing program, artist in residence program in Bermuda with this organisation called Masterworks, and they were setting up a museum of Bermudian art to sort of buy it back, because Bermuda was a bit like Cornwall in the 1920s, and because the light was so amazing, so a lot of artists would go out there, like Winslow Homer and Georgia O'Keeffe, and they made artworks in Bermuda, but then they got sold abroad. So the idea was to try and put a sort of cultural heritage back into Bermuda.
Oh, okay.
And an offshoot of that was that they invited contemporary artists to come out, and you know, you donate a piece of work to the museum, and in return you'd get an apartment and a studio to work in this paradise island. I could not believe it. It was too good to be true. And then I got it. I was like, what? This is amazing. So I asked my school, you know, I told them it was for 6 months. It was actually for 3 months. But I thought, you know, if I'm going to do it, then I'm going to go travelling afterwards. I didn't know I was going to sell anything, but I had 2 exhibitions out there, and everything sold. In fact, I pre-sold 2 paintings back here to people that had a connection with Bermuda. So that was good. So I had some money up front. My school even gave me some money, which was amazing. I think they weren't sure that I was going to come back, so you know, so it was incredible. I think they gave me £1,000, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So we had an amazing time out there. It's the first time I'd ever been able to paint without worrying about, you know, studio rent and you know, rent for my accommodation, and you know, so all my costs were covered. So it was really liberating time. I was there for 2 months on my own before Ingrid came out. So I was really quite on my own, because I was on quite a remote part of the island, living in this fort, and it, you know, I would go out on a little moped. You know, the island's only 26 kilometres long, so I would kind of whiz around the island, making sketches, and then go back and make them in the studio. And you know, it was really amazing time to go from Peckham one day to Bermuda.
Living in a fort in Bermuda.
Yeah.
And
it was beautiful. And then I would finish painting, and I would go and you know, go sort of snorkeling in the sea, in a little beach nearby the fort, and look at the fish, and you know, it was incredible. So I can't really believe that happened, really. But then we went travelling. You know, we had this money from the show, so I wanted to draw and paint kind of on the road, really. So we went from Panama to Mexico City for 3 months, overland, and I was drawing and painting like every day in my sketchbook, and just doing these scenes of the people that we saw on our way in all these different countries. So that was an amazing time.
And what year was this?
That was in 2001, and so we came back in December 2001, and then and I was back to my old flat, and this little studio. Actually, I think that's when I got the studio. Yeah, I think before that I'd just been painting at home. So I'd been painting in our room in the flat. We shared a flat shared a 2-bedroom flat with 5 friends. So it was quite. But luckily I had a big room, and I would use that. They were pretty good about it. They were, because they knew I wanted to paint. So they said, you have the big room. So then I got that little studio nearby, and then I was really serious about the fact that it was possible to do this.
Keeping the momentum up.
Yeah, I'd seen the reaction of people to the work, and I could see that people liked what I was doing, and I could see that people didn't really do very much kind of figurative painting that was based on kind of real social scenes. My heroes were always, from a kid, they were always Hogarth and Lowry and and Tintin when I was younger, and those are the kind of figurative groups that I liked. I just didn't see people painting that kind of stuff.
And it must have been a weird time for you to, just going back to when you were doing your degree, when we were doing our degree, it must have been a weird time for a painter like you to be doing a degree during the whole Brit Art.
It did feel a bit, it did feel a bit weird, but then I think it makes you more entrenched,
Yeah,
and again, perhaps during that time, I was thinking, why aren't people doing this stuff?
Yeah, good, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think I knew what I wanted to do then. I knew that I liked painting people, but I didn't really know how to. I'd go into the market in Cardiff, in the fish market, and my family were all fish merchants from Grimsby, so that was an interest of mine really. And then I think I was doing kind of pastoral sort of scenes of figures in the landscape in Ireland, and because I was going to Ireland a lot, so so that interested me. But I think that idea of trying to capture the energy of a city and the people of a city was I just didn't know where to begin.
Yeah.
I still find that I still struggle with that, to get that level of energy into the paintings of groups of people. That's something, to continue fitting the composition, structurally, and making it unique and different and appropriate to every different kind of urban sort of scene that you go to. Everywhere has a different feeling. There's a different geographical and psychological energy in the city, different characters, different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And I still struggle with all of that, but in a more complex way than I did back then. It was about grouping figures together and telling a story, a narrative through that. And now it's more about just how to sort of show the different parts of the city in different ways. Just working on a 2-dimensional plane, that's the trick really.
Okay, so in terms of how important has networking and exhibiting been in terms of getting your work out there and making a living?
Well, to sort of pick up from the journey, after I'd got that little studio and been very serious about my work, I set up an exhibition in a local pub. I tried to approach lots of galleries and nobody was interested. So I just put up some work in a friend's pub. It was quite an arty kind of pub, and I had another exhibition there, and I did sell work from that. That went well, and I made like lithographs of the paintings as well. So I was selling kind of, inspired by Hogarth and the emphasis that he placed on printmaking, as opposed to paintings. His paintings were kind of, they were sort of a vehicle to his kind of way of telling a narrative through a scene. The painting was almost like the first stage of that, and then he would make the prints, and each edition of prints would change slightly. He would kind of tailor it to the response that he got from the people that looked at it, and I just really liked what he was doing with that. So I'm not a printmaker, so